and to protect his Muslim nation. I testify that no one deserves to be worshipped except Allah, the one without a partner, the one without an equal, the one without a similar, the one who is unlike anything in the universe, and nothing in the universe is like him. He has no father, no mother, no sister, no brother, no son, and no daughter. He exists without time and place because he is the creator of time and place. He does not reside above the throne, and he is not attributed with fatigue, like the Jews say. And I testify that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the son of Abdullah, the son of Abdul Muttalib, the son of Hashim, the son of Abdul Manaf, from the tribe of Quraysh, is the best creation of Allah, and his final prophet and messenger, sent to all humans and jinn, and he is truthful about everything he conveyed of the revelation. We remind ourselves to have the sincere intention for the sake of Allah and attending the session of Islamic knowledge. We reach page 32 in the Layla Books edition of the text. It has the Arabic on top, English on the bottom. We got to section 8, the invalidators of wudu, ablution. The author said, ablution is invalidated by what is emitted from the eliminatory outlets except mani, fluid usually discharged by males and females during orgasm, touching the penis, vulva, or anus of a human with the inside part of the hand without a barrier, touching the skin of a marriageable female who reached an age at which she is normally desired, losing one's consciousness or sanity except if one is sleeping with one's buttocks firmly seated. La ablución se invalida por la emisión de cualquier cosa por las salidas eliminatorias excepto el maní. El maní es un término igualmente usado para hombres y mujeres, se refiere al fluido espermático del hombre y al correspondiente líquido seminal de la mujer. Tocar el pene, la vagina o el ano de un humano con la parte interior de la mano descubierta, tocar la piel de la mujer casadera, quien haya llegado a una edad en la cual ella sea normalmente deseada, perder la razón o la conciencia, excepto si uno está durmiendo sentado firmemente en sus asentaderas. Entonces esos son los asuntos que invalidan el wudú. Entonces si cualquier cosa que sale de la salida eliminatoria, excepto el maní, hace que el wudú se invalide. También tocar el pene, la vagina o el ano de un humano con la parte interior de la mano descubierta, es decir, sin barrera. Y tocar la piel de la mujer casadera significa una mujer que es posible casarse con ella, con la condición que haya llegado a una edad en la cual sea normalmente deseada, y perder la razón o la conciencia, excepto si uno está durmiendo sentado firmemente en sus asentaderas. Entonces, si alguien se desmaya, pierde el wudú. Pero si alguien se duerme mientras está sentado firmemente en sus asentaderas y se despierta así, de esa misma posición o en esa misma posición, entonces su wudú sigue intacto. Pero si se duerme así y se despierta, por ejemplo, acostado, entonces su wudú se invalida. So when it says the mani, it's referring to the reproductive fluid of the male and the female. Both men and women have this fluid. In the scientific term, in the English language, they only have a term for it. For the male, they call it semen, but the woman has a similar fluid also. So if that comes out of the person, then there will, and without any other of the invalidators of wudu happening, they still have their wudu, but they're obligated to make ghusl. But any other liquid or any other thing that is emitted from the eliminatory outlets, if it comes out, then it breaks the wudu. So whether that is a normal thing or an abnormal thing. As for touching the penis, what's meant is the shaft, not the testes. As for the vulva, what's meant is where the inner labia meet, not the outer labia. And the anus is where the excrement it comes out of. and not the buttocks. So to touch that with the inside part of the hand without a barrier breaks the wudu of a human being. As for touching the skin of a marriageable woman or marriageable female who reached an age where she is normally desired, so this is whether she's actually pubescent or not. So the metric is she reached at an age where she's normally desired by those that have sound nature, meaning not people that are perverted. So if that's the case, like let's say she's close to pubescence, and the person that touches her, or that the touch occurs, the skin-to-skin contact, is also at that age, then the wudu is invalid. But if either of them are not at that age, then neither's wudu is invalid. And this is when it's without a barrier. So if there is a barrier, the wudu is not invalidated. And intention here is not taken into consideration. So if it happens by accident, the wudu is invalid. And in the Shafi'i school, this includes the husband and the wife. So if the husband, let's say, he touches his wife's cheek, his wudu is broken, and her wudu is broken. And for losing consciousness, if the person sleeps while his buttocks are firmly seated, and he wakes up in the same way, then his wudu is still intact. But if he falls asleep with his buttocks firmly seated, and he wakes up, let's say, lying down, then his wudu is broken. Section 9, cleaning oneself after defecation and urination, istinja. It is an obligation to make istinja with water whenever any moist substance is emitted from any of the eliminatory outlets except mani, until that area becomes pure, or by wiping that area 3 or more times with material that is uprooting, pure, solid, unrespectable, and adequate for the removal of the najis filth, such as a stone or paper, until the area becomes clean, even if a trace remains. So there is something in Islam called istinja. And this also is a proof for the truthfulness of Islam, is that it is part of our religion that you actually have to clean yourself after urination and defecation, which means that, and it's an obligation for the Muslim to do that before he is going to engage in the prayer. Now, it doesn't mean that he has to do it immediately after urinating and defecating, or after urination and defecation. But if he doesn't do it right away, he has to make sure that he does not contaminate himself. But he can delay it if he wants, until before he's about to pray, then he has to do it. But in all cases, he has to make sure not to contaminate himself. So the way that he does it is he either uses water alone, or he uses something like a stone or paper alone, or he uses both. If he's going to use water alone, while having, let's say, both options, but if he is going to choose one over the other, then he should choose water over the stone or paper. And he can still choose only the stone or paper, even though he has water. But the best way to do it is to first use the stone or the paper, and then to use the water. The reason for that is because when you use the stone or the paper first, you remove the bulk of the filth. And then after that, you just wash with the water to remove the remaining traces that are left behind by using the stone or water. So when we say stone or water is because, when we use a stone or a paper. When we say stone, we're referring to something that satisfies these conditions, which are mentioned here. Uprooting, meaning that it takes it out. Pure, meaning that it's not filthy. Like, what's an example of something filthy? Like a piece of dried feces. When the feces dries up, it becomes hard as a rock. So it would not be valid or permissible to use the dry feces to clean yourself after urination and defecation. Solid means that it cannot be like disintegrated particles like sand. So you can't use like a handful of sand to clean yourself. Unrespectable means that it cannot have any religious or it cannot be respected religiously. What's an example of something respected religiously, like human food? So for example, you cannot take a piece of pita bread and use it to wipe yourself with it. This would be haram and invalid. It would be considered that you made istinja. And also like a piece of paper that has religious words on it. It's haram and kufr, obviously, to use that paper to clean oneself. And it's invalid because it's religiously respectable. And it says, and adequate for the removal of najis filth. Not exactly sure what they mean by that, because I've never seen that before mentioned in the text. But so basically, it's something that the thing that you use, like a stone, satisfies the conditions. It's uprooting, it's pure, it's solid, and it's unrespectable. So you can use that to make istinja. And it also has to be dry. And it looks like in the new version they missed that. I don't know why they changed it. But it's biqali and tahir, and uprooting, pure, jamid and solid. Wayl muhtaram is the unrespectable. And then it has to be dry. It cannot be wet. So the ideal way is to use the stone or paper and then water. Most people nowadays, they use toilet paper, but in many parts of the world, toilet paper is a luxury. There's many people in the world that they don't even have access to toilet paper. So the Islamic judgments are still relevant and they pertain to the stone. The author said, this is valid even if water is present, provided the moist najis filth does not move or become dry. If the emitted substance moves from where it initially settled or dries, then water must be used. So there's certain cases where you can't use the stone or paper. You would have to use water. What are those cases? Some of those cases is the filth, it moves outside of the area that it would be contained in. So for the front part, if the urine spreads beyond the head of the penis, then water must be used. If the urine spreads to the vaginal opening, meaning where the baby comes out of the woman, then she has to use water. And for the back, if the feces, it spreads to the part of the buttocks that are shown when someone is standing up, then they have to use water. So basically, like they had a blowout and they need to, they have to use water. They can't just use paper or stone anymore. And if the thing that comes out of you, if it dries, right? Some people, they stay on the toilet for so long, scrolling on their phone, that, for example, that it dried. So now if it dried, they have to use water. It's not enough for them to use paper or stone. Ahora es obligatorio realizar istinja después de la emisión de cualquier materia mojada por las salidas eliminatorias excepto el maní. Entonces cualquier cosa que salga de la parte delantera o la parte trasera de las salidas eliminatorias del ser humano, excepto el maní, entonces es una obligación hacer istinja, es decir, limpiarse, purificarse, antes de que realice el rezo. El istinja se hace dejando fluir el agua en la parte sucia hasta que esté pura, o limpiando el área sucia 3 veces o más hasta que el área esté limpia, aunque puede quedar un rastro que solo puede ser removido con agua, con un material desarraigador, puro, sólido e irrespetable como una piedra o un papel. Puede hacerse istinja de esta manera aun cuando haya agua presente, siempre y cuando la suciedad najas mojada no se haya desplazado o no se haya secado antes de limpiarla. De otra forma tiene que usarse agua. Entonces cuando decimos desarraigador, significa que ese material arranca las partes físicas de la orina o de los huesos de la materia fecal, exacto. Entonces tiene que ser arrancador, tiene que quitarlo de ese lugar. Y tiene que ser puro, es decir, no puede ser najas sucio, tiene que ser sólido, no como la arena, y tiene que ser irrespetable religiosamente. Un ejemplo de algo que es respetable religiosamente es el pan o una hoja de un libro islámico. Por supuesto, la persona que usa la hoja de un libro islámico, mientras sabiendo que es un libro islámico, comete blasfemia. Pero esos son dos ejemplos de algo que es respetable religiosamente, que no sería válido ni permitido usar para el istinja. Ahora, si la persona quiere usar solamente el papel higiénico o una piedra, tiene que satisfacer ciertas condiciones. Primero, tiene que ser que la sociedad najas no se haya desplazado, es decir, que haya salido de una área específica. Para el hombre, si se desplaza más allá de la cabeza del pene, entonces tiene que usar el agua y no es suficiente usar solamente la piedra o el papel. Para la mujer, si se desplaza la orina hasta de donde sale el bebé, cuando la mujer da a luz, si la orina llega a ese lugar, entonces tiene que usar agua y no es suficiente usar la piedra o el papel higiénico. Y por la parte trasera, si la materia fecal se desplaza al lugar donde es aparente cuando la persona se para de sus asentaderas, hay una área que se ve aparente cuando uno está parado de una manera normal. Esa área, si la materia fecal llega a esa área de los glúteos, entonces es obligado usar el agua y no es suficiente usar la piedra o el papel. Any questions about that before moving on to section 10, which is the obligatory ghusl? Section 10, the obligatory ghusl. The author said, rahimahullah, among the conditions of the prayer is purification from major ritual impurity, al-hadath al-akbar. By performing the obligatory whole body bath, the ghusl, or dry purification, tayammum, when one is unable to perform the obligatory bath, the ghusl. There are 5 occurrences which render the whole body bath ghusl an obligation: the emission of mani, sexual intercourse, menses, haid, postpartum bleeding, nifas, and childbirth. The integrals of the obligatory bath ghusl are 2: the intention to remove the major ritual impurity, al-hadath al-akbar, or the like, and to wash the whole body with water, including the skin and hair, even if the hair was thick. Entre las condiciones de rezo está la purificación del estado de impureza ritual, hadath akbar. Esta purificación se hace tomando el baño purificador, el ghusl. La purificación seca, tayammum, se hace cuando uno no puede realizar el ghusl. Es requerido de uno realizar el baño purificador después de que cualquiera de estas 5 cosas ocurra. Primero, la emisión de maní. Segundo, la copulación. Terminación del sangrado menstrual, haid. Terminación del sangrado de posparto, nifas, y el parto. Los integrantes del baño purificador son 2: tener la intención de aclararse del estado mayor de impureza ritual, hadath akbar, o una intención similar. Lavar el cuerpo completo con agua, incluyendo la piel y el pelo, aunque el pelo sea abundante. Entonces es muy fácil hacer el baño purificatorio o el baño purificante o por el baño purificador. Es que la persona tiene que tener la intención, ya como dijimos, la intención es fácil, y tiene que tener la intención, por ejemplo, que está realizando el ghusl o el ghusl obligatorio. Tiene que tener la intención que está realizando el ghusl obligatorio. No es suficiente decir solamente el ghusl y tiene que tener una intención, por ejemplo, que va a limpiarse de el estado mayor de impureza ritual, que se llama en árabe el hadath al-akbar, o una intención similar. Y después se lava el cuerpo completo con agua, incluyendo el pie, la piel y el pelo, cualquier si tiene, por ejemplo, un dedo extra o tiene algo que le está creciendo en su cuerpo, tiene que asegurarse que se lo lava todo, la parte aparente del cuerpo. Entonces no es una obligación hacer que el agua entre a la nariz o que el agua entre a la parte interior del oído o en la boca. Pero tiene que asegurarse que si tiene pues dobladas de piel o dobladas de, digamos, gordura, tiene que asegurarse que el agua entra entre esas dobladas, y también tiene que asegurarse que, por ejemplo, el agua entre las partes del cuerpo que están pues usualmente escondidas, tal como debajo de las manos, adentro de los glúteos. Para el hombre que no está circuncisado, tiene que lavarse debajo de la piel que está cubriendo la cabeza del pene, etc. Todo eso es considerado la parte aparente del cuerpo. The author said, section 11, the conditions of purification, tahara, are Islam, at-tamyiz, the capacity to reason and discern, the absence of anything which prevents the water from reaching the part that must be washed, for water to flow on the part that must be washed, to use purifying water, that is, water not stripped of its name, as a result of being mixed with a pure substance such as milk or ink, from which the water can be easily shielded. If the water changes because of its mixing with something in such a way that the word water is no longer applicable to the liquid, then this substance is not valid for purification. However, if the water changes because of its mixing with that which is hard to shield water from, such as its mixing with a substance that is in the water's natural place or pathway, then the purifying property of the water remains. Moreover, the water must not have changed by najas filth, even if it was a slight change. If the water was less than 2 kullas, it is a condition that it does not come in contact with najas filth that is not exempted. It is also a condition that this water has not been used to remove major or minor ritual impurity, hadath, or najas filth. So the issue about the water is very simple. Water itself, as you know, in its natural state, doesn't have a color, doesn't have a smell, and some people would say it doesn't have a taste. But the fact is that sometimes there are things that mix together with the water that change its color, or change its taste, or change its smell. So if that happens to the water, if the color of the water changes, or the taste of the water changes, or the smell of the water changes, then you have to check that thing that made the water change. If it's something that you can easily keep away from the water, like milk, like ink, like tea, like sugar, you can easily keep those things out of the water. So if something changed, if let's say milk was poured into the water to the point where the color of the water changed, and now that mixture, you cannot call it water technically. So someone asks you, what is that in the bottle? And if someone were to say water, they would be lying. That you cannot use that to make wudu, you cannot use that to make ghusl, you cannot use that to purify a spot that has been contaminated with najas filth, because it's no longer water. And it's only valid to use water for purification or for contaminating something, for cleaning something that has been contaminated with filth. So now if the water changes because of something that's hard to keep away from the water, then here in this case we say we can still use that water. So what's an example? For example, sometimes the water, it flows through, let's say, a highly sulfuric place. Like let's say the water is rolling in a stream and that area has a lot of sulfur, or there's a lot of different minerals in that water. So now the water smells like rotten eggs. So that those minerals that are surrounding the water or in the way where the water is flowing, is it easy to keep those things out of the water? No. So even though the water smells like rotten eggs, but it still can be used for wudu, and it still can be used for istinja, and it still can be used to clean something that has been contaminated with filth, even though the smell of the water changed. Because the thing that made it change is something that is hard to keep out of the water. Another example is like a river, right, that's very muddy, or that has, let's say, red sand at the bottom. So now the color of the water is brown. So normally water is not brown. Water is transparent, it's clear. But the water changed to the color brown because the river where it's flowing is very muddy. Is it easy to keep the mud out of the water? No. So you can still use that water to make wudu and for everything that you need. Now, all of that covers the pure substances. We're talking about things that are pure, not najis. Now, when we talk about najis things, so we look at the amount of water. If we have a lot of water, which is 2 qullas or more, then how do we judge this water? If it's touched by najis, we judge that if the water changes even a little bit because of the najis, then this water is now filthy. You cannot use it for wudu or anything because it was a large amount of water and it changed even a little bit because of the filth. Now, if the water is a little amount, which is less than 2 qullas, then we say, even if the water doesn't change at all, if it just gets touched by the najis filth, then that water becomes filthy. Now, who knows, according to, I guess, Western measures, what is the amount of water that's considered a lot? What is 2 qullas, let's say, in gallons? Not for the gallons, that's liters. But what's for the gallon? Who knows how many gallons of water is considered a lot? Yeah, like that. No, something like that, yeah. They say approximately. No, so just think about 52 like milk containers filled with water. That's a large amount of water. So Muqsim, tell me, this bottle of water, is this a large amount of water or a small amount? Small. So what happens if a drop of urine falls into this water? What's the judgment of the water? It's not just filthy. Nah. Even if the water didn't change color, right? And even if it didn't change smell. And even if the water didn't change taste. Nah. So they say unexempted filth, and it's referring to specific types of filth. And then like urine and feces and vomit and stuff like that. No. Like approximately 50 or 52, something like that. Approximately. It's not exact. It's approximate. For the liters, it's like 191, 192. Yeah, 51. Like 50, 51, 52.
16?
Not 16.
Each gallon is 4 liters, make 1 gallon, or that's 3 parts?
I'm not sure of the metric system.
3.7.
Yeah, the metric system is like off.
It's less than 4 liters, I go gallon.
Yeah.
3.75.
3.7.
Yeah, it's like a decimal. طيب, so now التيمم. Oh, wait, let me read this page. Las condiciones para que la purificación de uno sea válida son ser musulmán, estar en la edad de discriminación mental, mumayyiz, remover cualquier cosa que prevenga que el agua llegue a la parte que debe ser lavada, dejar que el agua corra en la parte que debe ser lavada, usar agua purificante, es decir, agua que no haya cambiado por haber sido mezclada con algún material puro, tahir, como leche o tinta, del cual el agua pueda ser fácilmente protegida. Si el agua cambia por su mezcla con algún material de tal manera que ya no es llamada agua, entonces no es válido usar esa agua para purificación. Sin embargo, si el agua cambia por su mezcla con materia que está en su lugar de origen o en su camino o lo parecido, y de la cual esa agua no puede ser fácilmente protegida, entonces esto no afecta la propiedad purificante de esa agua. Si el agua fuera mucha, 2 o más pulgas, no debió haber cambiado ni siquiera ligeramente por su contacto con suciedad najas. Si el agua fuera menos de 2 pulgas, suciedad najas que no es exenta, no debe haber tenido contacto con el agua aunque no la cambie. Además, el agua no debió haber sido usada antes para aclarar a alguien de una impureza ritual, hadath, y no debió haber sido usada para remover una suciedad najas. Entonces aquí están hablando de las condiciones para que el agua sea válida para ser usada, para hacer vudú o el baño purificante o purificador o para remover suciedad najas. Tiene que ser agua absoluta, es decir, este líquido que existe en su estado natural sin que cambie su olor o su color o el sabor del agua. Entonces el autor está diciendo si se mezcla con el agua algo que es una sustancia pura, una materia pura, tal como la leche o la tinta, y causa que esa agua cambie de color o cambie de olor o cambie de sabor, entonces ya esa mezcla no es llamada agua, entonces no se puede usar para hacer vudú o para limpiar una suciedad najas. Ahora sí, la cosa que se mezcla con esa agua, si es difícil proteger el agua de esa sustancia, entonces en este caso, aunque cambie el agua, no invalide que esa agua pueda ser usada para vudú o para purificar o para remover suciedad najas. Entonces un ejemplo de eso es como el agua de un río, que ese río tiene mucho barro y causa que el color del agua cambie a ser rojo o a ser color café. Entonces eso no causa que el agua no pueda ser usada para hacer vudú, porque ese cambio ocurre por una mezcla de algo que está en su lugar natural, un lugar de origen, y es difícil proteger el agua de eso. Ahora, cuando la sustancia que toca el agua es suciedad najas, si el agua es de alta cantidad, 2 pulgas o más, que son aproximadamente 52 galones o 190 litros de agua, entonces si el agua cambia, aunque sea un poquito, por su contacto con esa suciedad najas, entonces esa agua es juzgada como suciedad najas, y no se puede usar para vudú o para remover una suciedad najas. Pero si el agua es una poquita cantidad, menos de 2 pulgas, entonces si viene en contacto, y si una suciedad najas que no es exenta toca esa agua, aunque esa agua no cambie, entonces no se puede usar esa agua. Entonces solamente por tener contacto con la suciedad najas, el agua que es de una baja cantidad es automáticamente ensuciada con suciedad najas, es decir, no se puede usar para purificación. Contaminada, exacto, contaminada con la suciedad najas, y no se puede usar para hacer vudú o cualquier cosa. Break time? No, so we're gonna pray Isha, and then we're gonna have dessert, and then we're gonna do another short mesh. Any questions about anything? نهلل لا إله إلا الله. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. ربي الله فيكم. السلام عليكم.
Waalaikumsalam.